There he is.
Whoa.
Unbelievable. Hey, everybody, it's Thursday. Welcome to another Carvers and Creators, a weekly demonstration and discussion with pumpkin carvers, sculptors, and multi-talented artists from around the world. First, we ask that you give us a like and a follow on the platform you're watching us on. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. If you have any questions for the carvers and our special guests. Let's meet the carvers. Let's do it.
What the? All right.
First, he's an artist and sculptor from Boston, Massachusetts. He was a judge on season 3 of Outrageous Pumpkins on the Food Network. Paul Dever.
There he is. Hey, Paulie.
Happy Thursday, everybody.
Happy Thursday to you as well. Next, he's a multimedia sculpture artist from Tucson, Arizona, and a finalist on Halloween Wars 2019 on the Food Network. Matt Harper.
That looks like me. Yeah.
It does.
Oh.
Our guest tonight is a legendary makeup artist. He has done iconic work on movies like Stephen King's It, Robocop, and Guardians of the Galaxy, just to name a few. Please welcome Bart Mixon.
There he is. Welcome, Bart.
Welcome.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
My name is Michael Mondragon. I'll be running the show, moderating comments, and chiming in from time to time. Whoa.
Hello, kid.
Handsome devil.
You got the best last name.
Oh, thank you very much. If I rolled my R's, it'd be more impressive, but I can't do it right now.
He is a dragon. He's the dragon.
Let's check out our sculpts from last week. The subject was Hungry Yeti. And Paul, outstanding as always.
Oh, very good.
Oh, you don't like it, huh?
I don't know. Yeah, it's okay.
Oh, come on. Okay, Bart, we're notoriously hard on ourselves, but I like this one a lot, Paul.
Yeah, I think it was great. I'm a big fan anyway.
I screwed up though because
How'd
I
you
did
screw up?
the mitten on the arm, and I should have done a ski boot and a ski to kind of sell that it was.
Oh, Yeti. Well, Mitten's cold. You know, you're okay there.
Yeah, you get it that he ate the guy. That's all
Yeah,
this stuff.
I mean, if I didn't put a mitten or a boot hanging out of his mouth, he just looked like a pissed off, squash.
I struggle with that too. You'll see.
Well, he's not too hungry anymore because he ate the guy.
Right.
But,
Yeah, he's like post hungry.
there you go. He's ready for seconds.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Thank you.
And Matt.
Nice, man.
Cool.
Yeah, so my guy, I had him. My idea was to have him kind of drooling, like and he took a bite out of the squash next to him there.
Oh, right.
And I posted a couple pictures. It was a little bit more, you didn't have to really think it out. It was a little bit more visible, but yeah, I also struggle with this one too, Paul. Like I wanted to have him when you have a cylinder shape like like this, to have some kind of wild hair was tough. So I cut a big chunk out of the back and kind of glued it on the side to make ears and the hair coming out. That made it a little bit more dynamic looking, but yeah, I'm okay with it. Nothing special.
Yeah, I liked it, and I like how you've been showing your progress pictures too with the how you can see where you actually glued on, because you do a great job of seaming it. You can't really tell where it starts or ends, which is cool. So well done, sir.
That's hard sometimes. Yeah.
Very cool. They both make great makeups. So
yeah, see, all right, now I feel better.
Right, I do. Thank you, Bart.
Cool. Man. I didn't think of that. Actually, I'm going to leave frame 1 second. I'll be right back.
Let me guess. He's gonna get a hungry Yeti. And
he's gonna show up with a better hungry Yeti. That's what's gonna happen.
Not a Yeti, but let me see if I can get it out of the.
Oh boy.
When we did the when I was on the Michael Chiklis Fantastic Four back in 2004, I guess we had a pumpkin carving contest. So I did a big thin grim with the pumpkin, which was easy. I just cut the lid off and moved it forward to give him the brow ridge, and then just,
oh my god, how perfect!
Drew the rest of it, and then those are chiclet gum
teeth.
A little homage.
That's right. So
the color,
at least,
that's for sure.
Bart, big question is, did you win the contest? That's all that matters.
I either got first or second. I'm trying to remember. I think I did come in second. I'm trying to remember what got first, but I was too long ago.
Yeah,
but I was happy with with second place.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. That's fantastic.
That's awesome that you had that handy too.
It's hanging on my wall. So I was like, oh crap, I never carved pumpkins. And it's like, wait a minute, I've got this old thing.
Yes, I have.
That's right.
You're an award winner.
Award winning.
Exactly. Yeah, put that on your IMDb.
I'll have to post that. I'll scan it after this, and it'll be coming up soon.
Right on. Right on. Well, I work in pixels and vectors, and you'll never believe that I actually I woke up one morning and this came out of my mouth. Eddie and Freddie, the hungry Yetis who love to eat frozen spaghetti. That is honestly my first thought of the day. So I committed it to an album cover. Bart, for if you've watched the show for any time, whenever we spin the wheel, the phrase I have done work and it just turns into like album art. And so like it's just I'm just leaning into it at this point. It's now it's just super fun. I'm just trying to even challenge myself with this, but
cool.
That phrase did come out of my mouth.
There you go.
Yeah,
I like
it.
Oh, that's the best. Mick always has Easter eggs, but I swear this one could be a children's book too.
I was gonna say it's a kid's album.
And last week's looked like a children's album as well. So maybe I found my niche.
You're branching out.
Definitely looks like a kid's book, and one I would have bought my son 30 years ago when he was old enough, of that age.
Yes.
But, I'm a sucker for anything Yeti related. So
I agreed.
Where the wild things are, that genre of cover.
Yeah, that was my son's favorite book for.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, same.
So Bart, I'd like to introduce you to the fourth member of Carvers and Creators, responsible for our carving subject tonight. It is the hollow wheel, the center spinner, and as always, Paul will tell you about it right now.
Well, let's see.
Hello, kids. Happy Thursday. Thanks for being here, Bart. The wheel. So what we're going to do is we're going to spin it twice. The first time we spin it will be the character. The second time will be the emotion or attribute to which we have to apply to the character. So tonight's categories are Gargoyle, Senior Citizen, Guest Choice, so have one ready, Not of This World, Skeletal, Pennywise, in honor of you, sir, Fantasy Animal, Classic Monster, Undead, and Demon. And for the second spin, we'll have Disgruntled, Hysterical, Exhausted, Guest Choice once again, Euphoric, Robust, Agony, Furious, Astonished, or Infected.
Ooh.
The choices are endless.
And horrifying.
Yes. I'm already sweating. Here we go.
So we're going for character first?
Character first, right.
Character first. It's going to be a demon.
It's a demon. Okay.
And
then we got to figure out what
that
demon
at the end of demon. But I say demon. Does everybody else say demon?
No.
Just you. Yeah,
I also say drawing.
Drawing.
Yeah.
This must be a regional thing.
It so is. And you guys are really making me feel bad about it. Thank you.
Come on.
This demon is exhausted.
Ooh.
Exhausted demon. Okay.
All right. Be curious to see where this goes.
Yeah, you and me both.
So are we. Wow. Crap.
Spin the wheel, they said. It'll be fun, they said.
Yeah.
Exhausted demon. I am committing it to the chat, and it is on the board. And so if you're carving or creating with us, we're going to give you 5 minutes to get your tools together, get situated, get your carving oil of choice. Bart, are you drinking anything tonight, or are you
just Burbank tap water?
There you go, perfect.
Oh, the best.
Exactly, nothing finer.
Nice,
Love it.
Nice. Matt, what do you got?
I'm not a huge IPA fan, as you guys know, but I got one because the can looked cool. Is that bad? That's probably dumb, right?
No, it's all right.
It's called Abnormal, and it's a brewery from San Diego, of all places. A hazy IPA, and I figure if it's no good, I have a water backer. I could be
a water chaser.
A water chaser, right? Bart and I could be sipping water if this is no bueno. But anyway, let's give it a shot.
Nice. Well, I know Paul is an IPA fan, so.
Oh.
Yes, indeed, sir. So this is Creatures of Magic, and it's got. Looks like the Kraken.
It's a cool can. See, I would buy that just for the can.
Oh, is that a Yeti?
Yeah. It's a hungry Yeti. He's going to eat the unicorn.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's got a little gnome on it.
Nice.
Yeah, right. So Matt, I went down the same path as you. I looked at the can and said, how could it be bad?
Yes.
And it's a New England IPA, but it's from Vermont. So usually Vermont has really good beer. So Creatures of Magic, it's a 6.5, 1 PINT, as Matt would say.
PINT. I think that means pint. Okay.
I believe so.
Let's go with that.
Nice.
What are you drinking, Mike?
Well, I have a hazy double IPA. It's actually a collaboration. It was the second anniversary of this brewery that's in Anaheim, and they actually did a collaboration with Toppling Goliath, who they actually had a falling out with because a beer called Radiant Haze. So they actually did a collab with them to make nice, and
Nice.
I got it, and it's excellent as always. And so cheers to our creations tonight. We're so excited to have Bart here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And Bart, we're gonna start at the beginning. We're gonna start at the beginning, and it's 1977, and it's Spectrum Con, and you met someone that changed your life.
Yep, that's unfortunately that's me looking rather dumbfounded at Rick Baker. So I'm gonna be until I got the blue shirt on. That's my twin brother Brett's in the Star Wars T-shirt.
Oh wow!
Okay.
Brett also did visual effects, laser beam animation, that sort of thing. He did like on the first 2 Terminator films. But yeah, I was a Rick Baker fan from since the first Famous Monsters articles on him around 1970. And the sponsor of this convention was a friend of mine, John Fishner, who is also a bit of a sculptor. I took sculpting lessons from him early on, and he was a stop motion fan. So he would sponsor conventions with interesting guests. Like he had Jim Danforth the year before, and then he had Rick Baker this year. And Star Wars had just come out.
Yeah.
And so Rick was very nice. He actually talked to us. He gave me his contact information and encouraged me to write and stay in touch, which I did. This was again 1977. I went out and visited him in LA. I was living in Houston at the time. I would take trips out to LA in 78, 79, and 80. And like in 78, he introduced me to Rob Bottin, which then paid off in 86 when Rob hired me on Robocop. So it's all this kind of, circular, I met him here and then he introduced me to this guy and then, and it's the old who you know.
Exactly.
So, the network. It's like, absolutely. Yeah.
And he's a good guy to know. And then, then it ultimately, I worked for Rick on and off. I moved to LA in 87 and I worked for Rick, sporadically over the years, but probably the biggest treat was either 2010 or 11 when we did Men in Black 3 and I got to apply Boris the Animal. So even though I'd worked on things like Men in Black, the other Men in Blacks or the Grinch and was applying makeups, I didn't really get to do the featured character until Men in Black 3. Although I did do Jim Carrey for 5 days when Kazu, who was doing him, quit. And so until they talked Kazu into coming back, I inherited Jim because I had been doing the stunt Grinch. So it was definitely a Monster Kid fan, dream come true. Just getting to know Rick, getting to work for Rick, and then finally getting to apply a Rick Baker character. And Jermaine Clement was great. We keep in touch, and so it was a win-win for me. So
that's fantastic. And you're still in touch with Jermaine?
Yeah, in fact, he wanted me to work on the What We Do in the Shadows TV series. But unfortunately, I had a scheduling conflict. But he wanted me to do the Baron. But I did suggest to him that they should use Doug Jones for it. So I'm responsible for because he was kind of like, well, Doug's busy. I don't know if we can get him. I go, well, I think he's on hiatus, but because he was doing that Star Trek Discovery. But I go, yeah, it wouldn't hurt to ask, and they did, and he jumped on it. So
it's all about who you know, and
there you go. There you go.
My kids will be very happy to know that Jermaine. They're huge Flight of the Conchords fans, and What They Do in the Shadows fans. It's crazy. So that's really cool. What a one more less separation. I'm getting closer to Kevin Bacon on this.
There you go. But Jermaine's great. And actually, if you do with the old 6 degrees of separation. Since I worked on the Guardians movies, I like Dave Bautista and those guys I've met. And then so that Guardians holiday special had Kevin Bacon in it. So
there we go.
Wow.
You're closer to him.
only three, me, Bautista, and Bacon. So there you go.
Wow.
I'm 4 away now. I can tell my mom. All right.
Awesome. So I have all those movies, so we'll definitely touch on those definitely, because I'm sure there's a lot of talk around that. But so were you in school? Were you a classically trained artist, or do it yourself, learn it yourself?
Just self-taught. Just I was a fan. Was my brother and I, again, I have a twin brother, Brett. We were making our own Super 8, monster movies. And so they would need makeup or stop motion or whatever, because that's what we were into. Like the original King Kong's my all-time favorite movie. And that and comic book collecting, directly and indirectly got me, into doing makeup effects for a profession. But so anyway, it was just, we just, I wanted a zombie in my Super 8 movie, so somebody had to do the makeup. So it had to be me, it ended up being me. My brother was more like the camera guy and the writer and, that sort of thing. And then I would do like the 2D, or not, well, the physical art stuff. So if it was miniatures or stop motion puppets or that kind of stuff, that was usually fell into my lap. And I did have, again, this comic book club that we belonged to in Texas. I think we joined that in like 70 or 71. And a lot of those members were also interested in movie stuff. And there was a member there who knew some real, named Ken Donnell, who knew some real crude basics about makeup. And most of what he told me or taught me, I don't want to say it's wrong, but it wasn't the best way to do stuff. Like he'd take a life cast just with pottery plaster, which is not a good idea to put, but at least it got me, got me going in the right direction. And then meeting guys like Rick Baker in 77, I would correspond with him and he would tell me the right ways to do things. A lot of times living in Texas, I couldn't find, even though I knew how to do something, I might not either be able to find or afford the materials. So sometimes with my own solutions. And then when I moved to California and I'd be working on some low budget shows and, again, it's like, oh, we can't afford the silicone to make a mold off this. I go, well, I used to do it this way. And I go, hey, that's a good idea. So a lot of my generation is self-taught, and a lot of stuff that we came up with, we'd still use, or certainly, would influence, I guess, just the way things were done, in years beyond us. But this was from a show called The Supernaturals in 1984. Backing up a little, I had another friend, Ernie Freno, who's a stop motion guy from Dallas, and he moved to California and was working at New World Pictures. And so in 1981, Ernie had showed some of my stuff to, I think, John Beekler. And I got a call from New World saying we need, some extra people for a week or so. So I flew out and worked for them for a week, like a week before I got married. And at New World, I met Mark Shostrom, who I then worked for on a couple of shows, including this one, The Supernaturals, in 1984, and then Nightmare on Elm Street 2 in 1985. So even though I lost money doing that show, the Forbidden World, the one in 1981 at New World, it more than paid for itself, with both giving me a real credit and then the contacts that I made that I was able to, take advantage of later. So,
all right.
Yeah. So you mentioned Texas. So
there you go.
This is one that I actually snuck into. I was 16 at the time, and you had to be 17 to see it. And there was nothing that was going to stop. I believe, Matt, we went to Christown to go see this.
I think so. I still, I will say I have nightmares still, but this one disturbed the living F out of me when I was a kid.
That was definitely a fun one. Yeah, I was still living in Houston at this time. Tom Savini was shooting this in Austin, and had crewed the show mostly with guys from LA. I had been corresponding with Savini since before Creep Show.
Wow.
I'd sent him a packet of some photos hoping to get on Creep Show, and it sounded like I might have been getting on it. He was like, it's too soon, but you're definitely in there. So I'm like, oh, sounds great. And then I never heard back from him. So I called like about a month later, and he's like, I already got my crew. And I'm like,
oh crap.
but anyway, kept in touch. I knew that my brother had moved out to LA in '82, and a lot of the crew that Savini had hired for Chainsaw were guys that my brother, was friends with. So I knew it was going to Austin, and I called Tom a few times about seeing if he needed any extra help, and he was kind of non-committal. And this one of the guys on the team, John Vulich, who again was friends with my brother, he told my brother that Tom's not going to hire me over the phone, but if I drive to Austin and just meet him in person, that he will hire me. So that weekend I drove to Austin. He hired me. So then I drove back to Houston, quit my day job, which was I was working at an oil tool company doing technical illustrations for their tech manuals. And I packed up my car, drove into work, quit, and then just drove on to Austin, and then started.
Wow.
Unfortunately, the show was already in production by a few weeks in pre-production. So all the characters had been assigned. Like Sean McEnroe did Chop Top Here. Mitch Devane did the Leatherface mask. John Vulich did the old grandpa. Gino Crognali did the guy that's skinned. So I was mainly doing lab work and then set work. And I would I helped Sean apply Chop Top Here a few times, and then I would watch him on set. The Leatherface, I did make up his lips and around his eyes. We didn't have any prosthetics for the ulcers on the lips. There was basically it was like scar plastic. It was a liquid plastic that I applied to his lips every day and picked holes in it and stuff like that. So there was one effect in the show that I did sculpt. A guy was going to get his hand cut off, and they were going to have a hand laying on the ground twitching, and so it had a stump on it. And they had hired an amputee to be the guy who so you could have
brilliant.
I did a prosthetic to go on his stump. And when I'm taking the mold, I was like, "Are you going to be okay with this?" Because he had lost his hand, fairly recently. And he goes, "Oh yeah, it's going to be great. It's Chainsaw Massacre 2. It's going to be cool." So we make the stuff. I'm sure you can tell where this is going, but we make the stuff. They do I think it was the day it was supposed to shoot, and they get the stump on him and get it made up and blood on it. I think John Vulich applied it, and the guy literally is like, too soon. And he got up halfway, and we never saw him again. So he still had the prosthetic on his, and so they had to rethink the gag. So the one thing I sculpted for the movie didn't make it in there completely because this guy freaked out,
oh my God, that's a great story.
I thought it was. It makes me laugh. But,
it's a great story. Oh my God.
But then here's the best one. This was probably the first real movie that I worked on. I mean, Robocop. Chainsaw was cool, and Elm Street 2 and stuff like that. But I was still in Houston. We shot this in Dallas and Pittsburgh. Again, I'd met Rob Bottin through Rick Baker in 1978. And it kept in touch a little. I remember calling him once when they were working on The Howling. So he was sculpting werewolves and stuff. But I remember it like it was yesterday, Saturday night at midnight. I get a phone call, and I'm thinking who the hell's calling me, this late on a Saturday? And it was Rob. And he's like, "Hey, Bart, I'm in Dallas. We need an extra guy. You want to work on Robocop?" And I'm like, "You bet." So I flew up there, met with him on a Sunday, and started that Monday. They had Margaret Prentice was working on it for the first week, and she did all the ER stuff with Stefan Dupuis, who was our department head. But I believe she was pregnant at the time, so I think the Dallas heat was too much for her. So I'm not 100% sure if she was ever meant to be on the show for the whole run or just for that one bit that she did do. But once she left, they decided they needed to replace her with somebody. So fortunately, that was me. So that her firstborn son is my favorite child of hers because he got me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Exactly. But so I was on the Robo team. So our main, we were suiting up Peter every day. Stefan was the head makeup artist on the show. Rob Bottin obviously designed and created everything. But in addition to Robo and the third act face, when he has the helmet off, I also helped Stefan apply melting a meal. So I
love melting a meal. By the way, this is one of the things I was Paul and Mickey and I were talking recently about how much we love this movie, and this scene, the melting a meal scene. I mean, forget Peter Weller by himself, and those makeups and that acting was just stellar, and it's still to this day just holds up. And even though it's filmed so long ago, but this part was so gruesome, and there was so many like, and it was the toxic everything, all the little things that went into making this character look so disgusting and terrible. I still love to this day. It's like one of the top. It's all practical effects. It's beautiful to me. It's it's like The Thing or American Werewolf in London. It's got those elements of just an absolute like gruesome. But like I try to find the things that don't look real, and I can't. It's great. It's really great.
The one you were saying that how Texas Chainsaw would give you nightmares. When I saw this, it was like the first super gory movie that I had ever seen. I remember being a little different after for seeing it. Seeing all that gore.
This character was just so over the top. I mean, Robocop, I think, is just a really cool suit. I mean, it's a great movie. The suit and everything Bottin designed for that, is just perfect. But then this thing is it's almost like it's out of another movie. Like
yes, that's a great way to put it. Yeah,
but it works so well at that point in the film. I mean, you're just so invested and you're just going along for the ride. So when he comes spilling out of the back of that truck, you're just like, why not? And I mean, you got like bones sticking out of his, the thumb and the drippy fingers, and no, it was great. And Paul was really cool, and I bumped into him. I think I was working on NCIS, and like a couple of years ago, so that would have been like 30 years later. And I hear I didn't look at the call sheet to see who the director was because I was just like day checking, so it didn't really matter. I was just doing what my department head was telling me. But it's like, oh, I hear this familiar voice, and I look at the call sheet, and it's like, oh, Paul McCrane. It's like, oh my God, it's So I went over like, hey, you remember me from RoboCop? He's like, oh, you bet I do. And in a good way. He wasn't like he held no grudges. And he couldn't have been nicer. So it was great.
So great.
And there's the famous third act face. That was I just saw this about a year ago at Alamo Draft House in LA. They had like the director's cut, and it holds up beautifully on the.
It really does. Yeah, there's so many. So many cool parts.
I mean, again, Rob Bottin, Miles Tevis did a lot of his design work. Who's also a hell of a sculptor. So if you guys haven't had him on the show, you ought to look him up. Not Fernando. God, now I'm blanking on Henry Alvarez. I believe was Rob's main sculptor back in the day. He's unfortunately no longer with us, but I'm 99% sure Henry sculpted this. Wow. And I don't know if you ever seen a picture of it without makeup on it, but the edges go like right through the middle of the face.
Wow.
And I remember when we did the makeup test for this. Stefan did the first test by himself, and then I helped on the second test because I always applied the left side of the face, and Stefan did the right on both Robo and Melting a Meal. But there was Peter, there was Rob Bottin's head, and then me. So I mean, Rob was literally between me and Peter, not even looking over my shoulder. He was just like between us, watching every stroke that I did as I was applying that. So it's like, no pressure,
Yeah, no. Well, I got to ask you about that because I always stare at this. I'm like, where does it begin and where does it end? Because it's so you mentioned it's just around his lips and eyes and stuff like is where his actual face is.
No, it comes down the chin and then around kind of the jawline. Then it cuts up through the middle of the cheek, up under here, and then around the eye, and under the brow. There is, if you look on my Instagram later, there is a photo of Stefan and I applying it without any.
It looks so seamless, obviously on these pictures that I'm like, how does his face move? And the way that the latex, everything laid down, or I guess it was foam back. I don't know.
Yeah, it's foam latex, yeah. And I mean, like at the time I asked Rob, I was like, why is this thing in the middle of his face? And he's like, oh, Dick Smith could blend that. And I go, I'm not saying I can't do it. I'm just asking, aesthetically. But it made sense if you put it in the nasolabial fold. There's a lot of movement there.
Yeah.
And I think it would have worked itself loose. Plus, you got all the oils around the nose.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
So by backing it off here, it's less mobile.
Yeah.
And then if you took it too far back,
then you'd see a flap, and
it would look like a flange instead of a nice transition.
So
it makes sense design wise, but it was just a bitch to apply.
I bet.
But Stefan did a beautiful job coloring it. We'd apply the face together, we'd base it out, and then he would do all the shading and various tones on it while I glued the neck pieces in the back of the head on. So it's Stefan, this was the first show that I worked with a makeup artist of that caliber. So I really had to like kind of up my game. Like, okay, I gotta do good. I'm working for Rob Bottin, and Stefan Dupuy had just done The Fly, and he got the Oscar for that with Chris Wallace. So I was working with the big boys at this point, so I had to carry my weight.
Well, I like to
feel like moments like that.
Go ahead, Paul.
Really, do you feel like moments like that kind of moved you forward? You know what I mean? Gave you more confidence knowing that you can hang with them.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, this was. Even though I had worked on Elm Street too, so that was a real movie. But yeah, this was just in a whole different league. And yeah, it was a lot of it was just kind of sink or swim. We were doing like reshoots or not reshoots, but the whole end sequence where he gets killed. They saved that for like additional photography in LA, like in the early '87. And even though a bunch of Bottin's guys were there, like we're doing the hand that, when they shoot his hand off, it was like a fiberglass hand that you could reassemble, and had to put wax in the cracks and color it, to match. And like I got all the wax in there, and I was kind of like, okay, who's going to, paint this? And they're like, you're the makeup guy, you're doing it. I'm like, oh, okay. And I did, whereas, if they would have been like, oh, get out of the way, we'll handle that, I would have been like, oh, okay, I'll allow that too. In fact, when we were doing the reshoots, we had one day of Peter in this face, and Stefan couldn't make it. So I got to apply it by myself, which was both intimidating as hell, but also, it was a nice challenge. And so at least there's like 3 shots in the movie where it's like, hey, that's, I did the whole thing there. But the guys from Rob's shop were asking if I needed anyone to help me with it, because it was normally a 2-man job. And we were shooting with the animatronic puppet, Peter Weller, when he gets shot in the head. So I was like, well, the guy who painted that, it's like, I know I can apply it and I can get it started, but, the guy who painted the Peter Weller puppet, might be handy to have him there to help with some of the, finessing the paint job on it, because Stefan had always done that. And I had talked to Stefan and got his notes, but still I was like, it wouldn't hurt to have, this extra help. So they sent, I can't remember the guy's name, but he sits there and he watches me, glue the thing on and get it based out. And then I look over and I go, well, okay, now's, probably a good time that you could jump in and help. And he literally like kind of jazz hands like, oh no. And he left. He just walked out of the trailer. And I'm like, what the hell are you sitting here for, however long watching me do this if you're not going to help me when I need you? Yeah. And, so I was like, well, okay, I guess I'm doing it. And I did it. And, I defy anyone to tell which scenes or which 3 shots those. But anyway, so again, it was a good, I'm glad it played out that way, because I was able to say, this is, I did it, from start to finish. Whereas, prior to that, it was an honor to assist Stefan on it, but I was, like his assistant. So, or co-applicator, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, those handful of shots, I got to do it, by myself. So
trial by fire.
Nice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh,
there we go.
Fright Night 2.
Such a good movie.
So my this was shortly after I moved to LA. My brother Brett was working at a company called Fantasy 2 that was owned by Gene Warren Jr. And they did like Terminator, the miniatures and the effects animation and that kind of stuff on Terminator and Coppola's Dracula and Land of the Lost and all these kind of shows. And Gene wanted to have a creature shop so that he could compete with places like Boss Films that had, offered everything. So I put the creature shop together for him for Fright Night 2. So this was probably less than a year after I'd moved. I moved to LA in March of '87. I worked for Rick Baker on Gorillas in the Mist for several months, and then this came, I think, the end of '87, and then spilled into '88. And so it was my first job supervising a show in LA, and I was fairly new there. So thankfully, I'd worked at Rick's, so I'd met like Brian Wade, who was he sculpted the head for this. And the hands. Bill Sturgeon, who I'd known from Rick Baker's from American Werewolf days, he did the body for me. That's Aaron Sims, the tall guy on the other side of me, and he's like probably the main creature designer now. He's got what the hell's his studio name? But I don't know. You look at virtually any, he did the big thing in Stranger Things, the whatever that monster.
The Demogorgon guy,
yeah. But he's just like the leading creature designer. And then Jim McLaughlin was also on my crew, and he's just an all-around, great artist. Both he was a hell of a mold maker, but he also would sculpt and paint and whatnot. So I had a good. You're only as good as your crew, basically, because you can't do it all yourself. So thankfully, most of the shows that I supervised, I was able to populate it with friends who are just damn talented. So and then this was we did for Julie Carmen, and the next one was she's got Brian sculpted this, and he and I applied it. So she's got a forehead and a nose and a horseshoe wrap, with the cheeks and chin. Tommy Wallace wanted kind of an amped up version of Julie Carmen. So this was I forget what I don't know if he just called it Super Regine, but it was used sparingly, but she would just be a little extra vampire, vampiric or whatever. So she had the lenses and the fangs, and then again this face prosthetic, which and then we had like a lace brows and a lace front on the wig and stuff. So that was a cool makeup. These were her at the at the end when she gets hit by sunlight, which in the pre-production meetings we're like, all right, so does Julie need anything in this scene? And Tommy's like, no, we don't need any makeup on her. And then we get there on the day of shooting, and he's like, okay, they're shining the sunlight on her, so then we need to start seeing the burns. And it's like, okay. So thankfully we had gelatin in our kit, which all of the burns on her face and hands are done with the gelatin. And then we had an effects head, which is the bloated one, where we pumped. There's a chemical trichloroethane, the stuff that in The Exorcist, where it says "Help me" on Linda Blair's stomach.
Oh yeah. Raises.
Yeah, that was a foam latex stomach, and you paint the chemical on it, and it attacks and swells the foam. And in the case of The Exorcist, they ran it in reverse, and but so we had a dummy head that had tubes in it that would pump the trichloroethane in to swell the foam latex in the areas that you see. And I think the fangs grew, and Jim McLaughlin put most of this particular head together. So that was a cool. And then there's so much fire and quick cutting and stuff. I was watching the end of this recently, and I'm about to post it on Instagram actually. But I gotta scan all the pieces that we made, because we made like maybe a half a dozen things that they literally burned through in a couple of minutes.
Like seconds.
Yeah, this has got so much optical fire added over it, but that you can't even see what it looks like. And this was I sculpted the head for this, and then Aaron and Joey, or not Aaron, Joey Roscoe, and Gregor Punchetz did the body. And that was the actress's name was Dinah Cancer. She's the lead singer of 45 Grave, who did part of
45 Grave,
Return of the Living Dead. So she was like 5'6", I think, and weighed about 90 pounds. So we kept, when we were casting, we're like, we need a thin woman to play this, and they'd bring petite women, but they were still too busty or too hippie or whatever. I don't know. They need to be thinner. They need to be thinner. It's like, anorexic. We need to, And the first time we put her in the suit, we're kind of we had zippers in the shoulders. I hate zippers up the back on suits, so anytime I can avoid that. So I do. So on this suit, it had zippers in the shoulders that unzipped, out to here. So it opened up the suit was like a big onesie, and we could open the neck of it up, and she could step in it, and then we'd zip it up and glue it down, and then the head glued over it to hide all the zippers and stuff. But the first time we're putting her in it and trying to get it past her hips, we inadvertently like picked her up about a foot off the ground and didn't even realize it because she was so light, you know. So anyway, but she did a great job. I also used her years later in Necronomicon. Because of budgetary reasons, I reused some of like this head piece, and so I called her up to see if she would do it for Necronomicon, and I guess she had a bad experience on Fright Night because she was in the suit for 18 hours straight.
Oh my god!
There's no fly in it, and I think 17 hours in, we had to cut a hole in the crotch so she'd go to the bathroom. But but anyway, but when I called her about Necronomicon, I get her husband on the phone, and I got to talk to Dinah. It's Bart Mixon, and I can hear him like hang on, and it's Bart, and I can hear like, no, I don't want to talk. And I go, she doesn't have to wear the whole thing. It's just the head. She doesn't have to wear the body. And then she like real sheepishly like, hello. I talked her into coming back. And then I think the melting stuff on Necronomicon, we were doing vinegar and baking soda to get like all this weird foamy shit. Mm-hmm. So we ended up getting vinegar like squirted all up under the mask, and so it was probably even worse than this was.
So she's not picking up the call this time.
I know better than to bother asking her again. But yeah, this was my first supervising being responsible for the creature effects on a big show in LA. So it was a lot of pressure because Greg Cannon was doing a couple of characters for it, so we had to make sure that our stuff looked as good as as Greg's, or at least looked like it belonged in the same movie. But again, I had a great crew with Brian Wade and Norman Cabrera did some work for me on this, and Matt Rose did a little something, and then like Aaron and Joey and Greg, and Barney Berman was on it, who's now an Oscar winner, and a buddy of mine, Brent Baker, was one of our main mold makers. So I had an excellent crew on it. So I'm very proud of the work we did on this.
Bart, you talked about like carving real quick on that last one, doing the or not carving. I'm carving, sculpting that head on the last one. Do you do any sculpting anymore? Or I know your makeup is legendary. Do you do much in the world of sculpting?
Sadly, no. I for various reasons. I think the last thing I sculpted for a movie was in 1998 for the film Rushmore. There was a bully character that had a deformed ear, and I I sculpted the prosthetic for that and applied that. Just for various reasons, I fell into more of a supervisory type position on a lot of shows. Like I was Rick Baker's shop foreman on Gremlins 2 for a year and a half, where I had like 75 people that I had to keep up with who was doing what and making sure everybody was on schedule. So a show like that, I wouldn't have time to. And plus,
you can't do it,
yeah. But also when I'm working for like somebody like at Rick Baker's, he's literally got the best people in the business. So I mean, I think I did okay, and I'm happy. Like with this one, I liked, and my Pennywise. When we get to that, I was real pleased with that. But
sure,
if I could afford someone better, or if I just a lot of times I didn't have the time to do it, so I would hire have to job it out. When I was doing that show Necronomicon, there was a makeup for that I sculpted, but I was so busy during the day just answering questions, for my crew, that I couldn't get any work done. So I remember one night after, everybody left, I just sat there because I had to get this thing finished. And then like in maybe 2 hours, I was done with it because I was just uninterrupted and, could just bang it out. And, but otherwise I'd be like, I'd just start getting into it. And then I had to go, put out a fire somewhere, and just, there just wasn't time to do it. So sometimes I do regret it. On Men in Black 3, Bill Sturgeon was running the show for Rick, and he did ask me if I wanted to sculpt an alien for that. And I was tempted to do it, but again, you had like literally the best sculptors in the business working on that show. And I hadn't touched clay in 12 years. And I'm like, I'm not going to embarrass myself in front of these guys by trying to remember how to sculpt something. So, so part of me regrets kind of letting that go, but it just, since about 1999, 2000, I've primarily been an on-set application person anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's just kind of the way, things kind of played out. So,
Okay.
but yeah, I do. There are times that I regret it. I am thinking once I do retire that I do have like a lot of designs for stuff that I haven't done over the years that I might start pulling some of that out and start doing, maybe some that quarter scale, little busts and stuff of just to be doing it. When I look at that
for you, not for someone else, right?
Yeah. But yeah, but anyway, but you will see. But yes, so I did sculpt, and like I sculpted this. I sculpted all the Pennywise stuff, but and applied and designed it. So
Wow.
And again, when I see stuff like this, I'm like, oh crap, I should have stuck with it, with it. But oh well, it just.
I mean, that look in particular is one of the most copied sculpts that you see out there. Like everybody wants to try and replicate that.
And I'm very, very happy to see that when people do, and there's been a few people that I've seen some that are just excellent. Like, it's like, wow, that looks better than mine. I've seen a lot of misses. The thing, even when people are replicating the regular Pennywise, the thing they always get wrong is the nose. A lot of people just do like a ball. But it does. It's got a very specific shape, and it blends off. So it's a nose down here and it's a ball up here, but it's turned up a certain way because it was kind of a stylized Lon Chaney Phantom of the Opera was like my original design. That's what I had in mind as I was sculpting it. Even though we didn't end up using the cheekbones and the chin that I had made for it. So anyway, so just that's I'm just surprised that how many people that do try and copy it, that they miss that element of it. But
it's the subtleties. It's the subtleties of it, right? So you're the equivalent of Paul McCartney with Blackbird. That's what he leads with in a concert, and he says, "Does everybody know how to play Blackbird if you play guitar?" And then before anybody can answer, he goes, "You're all doing it wrong." So everybody does it wrong because of that. So
right. So, but anyway, but it's nice to have. I've worked on a lot of cool stuff, Robocop and a lot of the Marvel stuff since then. But those were I was executing other people's designs and concepts. And this was, again, I was the creature effects supervisor. This has been my only single card credit, on a show. So I was responsible for all the creatures. And then obviously I wanted to do the Pennywise stuff myself. So I handled both his acid burn and his regular look, the design, sculpting, application of that. So it is nice to have something that is so recognizable. And there's been a resurgence in popularity, I guess, with it since the remake. So now there's action figures. I got the room behind me here. I got action figures all over the place of, both versions of my Pennywise. Now you can get cool T-shirts like this that, have got my, my design on it. So I'm loving it, as McDonald's used to say. But yeah, it's, I'm glad when people like it.
Bart, I'm fascinated with. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
Go ahead, Matt.
Just back to Pennywise real quick, because I'm so fascinated by it. What was the origin for you? What was the phone call you got to go do that? I just would that part. I'd love to know.
Right. Well, again, this was directed by Tommy Lee Wallace, who directed Fright Night 2, and so he had we had a good working relationship. Via Fantasy 2 with Tommy on Fright Night. So that was Gene Warren was in charge of the opticals and visuals and miniatures, and I was his creature shop guy. So when this came in to Fantasy 2, the script, Tommy wanted to use them because, of the past relationship, and I was just part of that mix. So, so thankfully this came right after I just finished Gremlins 2, which was like a year and a half. And I had a little bit of a break where I was able to do the liquid nitrogen guns that Gary Busey uses in Predator 2 when those guys are trying to capture the Predator in the meat locker. So the backpacks, helmets, and these big liquid nitrogen guns, I built those. And then it segued right into this. So thankfully, the scheduling worked out well, because I don't know if I had to choose, between leaving Rick's and Gremlins to go do this, it would have been a tough choice. And plus, key members of my crew like Norman Cabrera and Jim McLaughlin were I'd taken. Norman was a fixture at Rick's anyway, but like Jim, I'd brought over to Rick's after Fright Night, and Aaron Sims and Joey Orozco, and so all my key guys were working at Rick's on Gremlins anyway. So thankfully that show ended, and Rick didn't need them for a while, so I was able to to get him back briefly. But it was it was just, again, the connection with Gene in the previous relationship, with Gene Warren and Tommy Wallace from Fright Night 2.
Okay, thank you.
Well, you bet. As you can tell, I love to chat.
Ernest.
Ernest Scared Stupid. This is for the Kyoto. Do what?
Underrated movie, by the way.
I will say it's my favorite of the Ernest films. Although Ernest Goes to Prison, it's got some good moments too. But yeah, this was I worked shortly after it. The Kyoto brothers were literally right around the corner from Fantasy 2, and they were looking for a shop foreman. So I ended up working for them for about 2 years, from 1990 or 91 to about 93. And so this was probably the biggest thing we did for them. I do remember I was doing another show for them before this. And again, some of my crew, like Jim McLaughlin and Brent Baker, I wanted to bring over onto this one, but I wasn't allowed to say what it was, but so I was trying to get them to keep themselves available. And I was like, well, I can't tell you what it is, but it's a sequel and it's a genre movie. So they're thinking like, oh, it's, Nightmare on Elm Street 4 or, Phantasm 3 or whatever. And then when I finally go, it's Ernest Scared Stupid. And they're like, but I had a blast on it. I mean, as you can probably tell, the Kyotos have got a very distinctive design style, but we did some of the background guys are killer clown heads that we did add-on appliances like new noses and ears and cheeks or whatever. We did sculpt a couple of new heads other than the Trantor. James Cagle sculpted the Trantor. Charlie Kyoto and Steve Kyoto did all the design work. Again, I was a shop foreman, so I just mainly put the crew together and did a lot of problem solving in terms of how things would be, the approach would take to building the stuff. I did go on set with it initially. Charlie Kyoto and myself and Gregor Punchatz were on set, and then I believe Guy Hember was our mechanic. But we still had, the Trantor worked by himself a lot of the show, and so that was the first thing we delivered. And I don't think stuff was getting done in a timely fashion back in the shop with the rest of the characters. So pretty quickly, I just figured out that they had it between Charlie and Greg and Guy. They had it on set covered, but I needed to get back to the shop and make sure the other stuff, got time. So I went back and, made sure the rest of the stuff got built. And then they were also doing Land of the Lost, and they somebody else was supervising that for them. And then they kind of quickly put me in charge of that one too. And I think about a week later, I remember Steve Kyoto going like, "Hey, thanks, Bart. You've pulled Land of the Lost out of the toilet." So I guess it was going a little off track, and I got it back on track for him. So the Kyotos are great. They're a little crazy. The New York Italian, so they a lot of beating each other up, but for their meetings and stuff. But they're real characters, but they're super talented, and it was great working with them. And we're still pals. I see them once in a while. I get Monster Palooza and stuff like that. But it was a lot of fun. And I've been on location at places and just like out in public. I was wearing like an Ernest Scared Stupid shirt, and like the person behind like the register at the CVS or something was like, "Ooh, Ernest Scared Stupid, my favorite movie," and so it's real cool that it's got the following, that it does. In fact, actually, Killer Clowns is going to be on Svengoolie this weekend, which is another. I worked on that briefly for the Kyotos. So I met a little bit on that, and then I came in like again as their shop foreman for a couple of years. Around right before Ernest. So
that's amazing.
Dynamite.
Oh, hey, some fun stuff. What was this one from? Night of the Scarecrow.
Night of the
Right?
Scarecrow.
Yeah, that's Martine Beswick, right? Why am I asking you guys?
I'll say we're going to say yes to that, Bart. Yeah, of course that's that person. Yeah.
Obviously.
Shortly after working with the Kyotos, in 94 to 98, I had my own shop with Earl Ellis. So we were Mixon and Ellis effects or me effects. So I tell people to make the check out to me. And we did a lot of, low budget stuff, just basically whatever we get our hands on. Night of the Scarecrow was one. Dave Miller was doing the Scarecrow and a couple of other gags, but we did a handful of victims, including this one who I guess she was doing some crocheting or needlepoint or something. And you can't really read it, but it's supposed to say "do unto others," and I think "others" is kind of sewn into her face. So you see that blue thread and stuff. I think the way they shot it in the movie, it shows it off a little bit better. Okay. And then that's I did a lot of the set work on it. And this is another buddy, Joe Podner, that worked with us a lot. Unfortunately, Joe passed away a couple of years ago, but he was like a kind of a fixture. If there was a third member of the shop, it was always Joe. So, but we did a handful of fun stuff. Rick Baker subcontracted a couple of alien characters for the first Men in Black when I had my shop, so that got me SAG, so, it is some good times. I will say, backing up with working for the Kyotos, I did a show for them called Double Dragon that I ended up taking the set, and that's the show that got me in the union. It's always tricky to get in the makeup union because you have to get 30 days on a union show, but you can't work on a union show unless you're in the union, and you can't get in the union unless you work on a union movie. But we did the first half of the movie in Cleveland, and it was non-union. And then when we moved to LA for the rest of the shoot, it got picketed and it flipped and became a union show. And so I ended up working 31 days on it, and my partner Earl did 30, and that's 30 was the magic number. So we both we
found out about that last week. We were talking to V, and she said she was a 30-day wonder to get on the and to get her next thing, I think, which was Star Trek the movie, and like all those. It's fascinating because I didn't know it was that critical to get the really good jobs back then to be on the union. That's
well, and it's weird in the 80s. Fright Night 2, I was not in the union, but there was nobody ever questioned me going on set. I don't know. Now Fantasy 2 was a union shop, so maybe they just assumed, but they were local 44, which is like props and practical effects. But nobody ever asked for like, hey, where's your union card? And we shot that in Vancouver, which maybe that was out of their jurisdiction, but that was non-union. So a lot of the stuff, I wasn't like aggressively trying to get in the union. I mean, thank God I did. My career certainly, everything I've done since 1999 on has been, for the union work for the most part. But it was just kind of a fluke, but I certainly jumped at the chance to do it. That previous one was just I did a lot of day checking on Star Trek, mostly DS9 and a little Voyager. And these were, I forget what these guys were, but just they always had a variety of aliens. At least these were sculpted to look like that. We would also do what we called Westmore aliens, where we would just pull random things off the shelf and kludge something together.
Whatever Westmore made before, you just kind of piecemeal it.
Yeah, but he guys that had a shop background like myself, we would usually get those assignments because he knew we could kind of think on our feet. Like, we'd take like a nose and turn it upside down and stretch it and, like make a chin out of it. And there'd be other artists that'd be like, well, that's not a chin, it's a nose. It's like, well, when I glue it on his chin, it's going to be a chin, and it's just some people were too timid to just, kind of go nuts or think out of the box. And I was like, screw it. Let's have some fun. And then we passed up on Shithead from Men in Black 2, which that was the Mitch Devane designed it. Steve Koch sculpted it. And I don't know if you know Kazu, who's he got an Oscar for Darkest Hour and Bombshell, and he's like probably the main prosthetic guy now in LA.
Oh, wow.
But he did makeup tests on every character for Men in Black 2 to establish them. But this is the one he refused to do. He's like, I'm not doing that one. So I was like, oh, that looks like the guy wearing it was a stuntman from The Grinch, who he and I got along real well. Sonny Tipton, who's unfortunately also passed away. What's all these pictures of dead people for?
There you go, Mickey. What a jerk.
Postmortem.
But Sonny was great, and so this was a fun character to do. He had probably the most coverage I've ever done on an actor. I mean, he had false teeth. We had a rubber tongue that looked like shit. He had eyelids. If you see a picture of his teeth, they look like peanuts, and his tongue has got like corn in it and stuff. It was this one had a lot more bathroom humor than the first one. So
wow.
This X-Men 3, Kelsey Grammer. This Spectral Motion designed this. Yeah, I love this makeup. Kelsey was perfect casting. And I believe I want to say Moto Hata at least did the face. I think the head, the cranium, and the neck and the ears may have been done by somebody else, because they went through a couple of different makeup tests before they arrived at this look. But they were able to use the neck and the head and the ears from a previous version. But this is foam latex. So this was back before they flirted with doing it out of silicone, but they hadn't gotten the bugs worked out of it yet. And thank God we didn't, because it would have been a major pain in the ass. But it was a beautiful sculpture. Just all the line work around the eyes just like went right into Kelsey's. So when you got it lined up right, it was just seamless. It was beautiful foam. Margaret Prentice did a lot of our pre-paint on it, and then Tom Flouts and I applied it. And Flouts, in fact, I'm working with Tom tomorrow. He's probably the best painter in the business these days, and just a hell of a makeup artist. And always enjoy the work.
Or you can tell it's him. I mean, when you look at his face, you just immediately say it. So your point is, really well put. That everything lined up perfectly, because you just, no matter the angle, you can tell it's still him. That's crazy.
Exactly, and it's complete coverage. It's not like, we just put a forehead on him. I mean, everything except for his lips are covered with prosthetics. And they go right up to his eyelids and his eye bag under his eyes. So, I mean, it's again complete coverage, but it was a great design. It was being true to the character, but yet not losing the actor. And it was just the best of both worlds. And I really, we almost, this made it to the bake-off for the Oscars. We didn't get to the nomination stage, but we got to the stage before that where it was at least in contention for a nomination. So, which was the only time I've gotten to go up and like present a show and do a Q&A and, on how we did the stuff. So, no, it was a great makeup. He was a hell of a guy. The director, Brett Ratner, was a different story. he was quite a character. But it may not be the most beloved of the X-Men movies, particularly following X-Men 2. I don't think it was necessarily as good as that, but there were certainly high points in it, and Kelsey was definitely one of them. And then that fed into me just being a comic book fan, getting to work finally on stuff like this. And here's Vinnie Jones as a Juggernaut, which again Norman Cabrera did all the sculpting on this.
Wow.
And again, Flouts and I, he's got like a full body suit, and the piece he's got a jaw, because the body was so enhanced. He's got a neck, and then it ends at the jawline to kind of transition into his head. And again, Tom Flouts and I did the application. The body was pre-painted and had like hair punched in it because we could reuse that. But from the neck up was new pieces every day.
Wow.
And Vinny was great too. We I'm not really a soccer fan, so before we went to set, I was like, oh, Vinnie Jones, I'll look him up online. And there's like a picture of him like grabbing some soccer referee by the balls, And I'm like, oh, great. What's this guy going to be like? But he, he's sweeter. He was a very nice guy. He would, kind of screw around with us a little, but we'd give it to him back. And so he was very cool. So again, I don't think they should have ever taken the helmet off of him. Being a comic book fan and a purist, not ever would have taken his helmet off, and it should have rested on his shoulders. And not, because the whole point of him is using the force of his body to be able to, batter through a wall. But and Spectral even came up with a really cool helmet that rested on his shoulders, but also had like a big ball joint to where it could still move around. But for whatever reason, the producers didn't want to go that route. And then this is Michael Chiklis, and the Fantastic Four movies were shot on either side of X-Men 3. So I'd met. Mike had worked at Rick Baker's when I was there, like a Men in Black 2. But then he put his Spectral together to do the first Hellboy, all the secondary characters other than Hellboy. And then being on set with him, he got to realize that I was a comic book fan. So when Spectral got the Fantastic Four, thankfully I was the first guy he thought of for applying it. The little picture is from the first one. The larger pictures from the second one. I forget who did the pre-paints on the first one. I want to say it was Tim Gore.
Tim.
And then Margaret Prentice did the second one. And I thought Tim did a great job with the first one, but I think they were trying to be too realistic, for lack of a better word, like, trying to get like real sandstone and stuff like that, which it was a cool paint job. But I think for the second one, they went a little more comic bookish, a little more graphic. It's just like, he's orange. We're going to make him orange. And again, as a comic book fan, I think I really like the look of him in the second one. I wish we could have gotten a thicker brow, more of a, the way Kirby did him, like heavy, the middle of Kirby's run, but this is the early thing, But Chiklis was cool. He wasn't a big fan of wearing prosthetics, and I don't think he's ever worn any since this. But he signed up for it, so he was there every day. So I made him up. So
it's clobbering time.
Exactly, and I almost wore a Thing T-shirt.
What's the most challenging makeup with this? I'd assume that this would be one of them, right?
Well, actually, this one's probably was one of the easier ones because of all the rocks, all the edges were, all the breaks in the makeup were hidden in the rock.
Oh,
so it was. I mean, you still have to glue it and blend it off and match it, but it was pretty heavily pre-painted, so everything was already tied together pretty well, and there was no like delicate blending edges like the Kelsey Grammer one or the Vinnie Jones one. I mean, that had to like blend off, there, or like around Kelsey's eyes and mouth. I mean, that had to be pretty much seamless, or you'd see, where the edges were. This thing, you didn't have that issue because we could hide all the edges, in the cracks. We would make him up from the neck up. So it was like a neck and a headpiece, and then a forehead and a face, and I think a lower chin or lower lip. All the body stuff was various combinations of suit parts. So if he was going to be wearing something like this, then like the torso might be a lightweight, foam, like made out of what's called Scott foam, which is like an open cell, kind of like an air conditioning filter. So anything that was covered with wardrobe was a lightweight version that had the same proportions but weighed a lot less. So just the things that were cosmetically, visible were the ones that were finished off. So if we knew, like when he's in the Fantastic Four suit, the legs were this lightweight version, but from the waist up was the foam latex suit. But if he was wearing something like this, the chest and the torso would be the lightweight version, and then the arms would snap on to the suit, and then the hands joined at the wrist, and again there were snaps, and then we'd still have to glue the seams shut, but it was done in such a way that we could get him in and out of it pretty quick. So like if he had like a 30-minute break, we'd sometimes take him out of everything from the neck down, and he would just kind of hang out in his like a body armor type thing. And then, we need him on set in 10 minutes. Okay, here, let's get you back in it, And so this was a very about as user friendly as something like this could be. I mean, again, like the Vinnie Jones thing, once we had him in that, he was in it. We couldn't be popping him in and out of that. And Kelsey, was in his, the bodysuit would come off, but, the face had to stay on there. But yeah, for this one, I think it probably took us like 2 hours and 15 minutes to apply.
Wow, what's this?
Yeah, so that was pretty quick. Oh, I should have disabled my.
I'll get it for you.
Okay. Where is that? There's a mute button on there. Damn it. There. Okay.
Maybe it's the call for the next big thing.
It is. Yeah. We just cost you a bunch of money. Bart, question on the kind of from Paul's question. When it comes to like the harder ones to do, you mentioned like the amount of hours it takes to put it on. Then they have to wear it and be on the set and do their thing, and then they come up. Is there one that's like, I know from Guardians of the Galaxies, I think it's pretty notorious that the amount of time Dave Bautista had to sit in a chair and all these guys, let alone the full body stuff. What's the longest you've had to have or that it took to put makeup on someone?
Right. Probably the little Dead Girl in the Ring movies.
Oh wow. Okay.
That was I think that was about when we had to do her head, arms, and legs, like on Ring 2 or Ring 3. That was, I think, around a 5-hour makeup. The Dave Bautista, I helped on Guardians 1. I helped with some reshoots, and we were using silicone prosthetics on that one, and that was, I think, about a 5-hour. When it went, that was the first one was done in England. Legacy Effects, that used to be Stan Winston, they inherited it for Guardians 2, and they switched from silicone to a technique. It's a Bondo transfer, so it's a prosthetic glue, which is a water-based glue, and they mix it up, whip it up into a paste, and then you put it in the mold, and they dehydrate it, and then you get these basically like Cracker Jack, temporary tattoos, but they're 3-dimensional.
Stick them on.
So,
wow.
Yeah, you stick them on, and with water, they're on a paper backing. You stick them on, you wet them, they slide off, and so they cut the makeup down from like 5 hours to, I think, maybe 3 on. I think by the time they were done with Guardians 2, they had it down to like maybe an hour and a half.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, there's like, maybe 6 people. I mean, I helped a couple of times, and it was just this tornado of, paint and stuff sticking on, and just, it was almost, too chaotic. But the downside of that is that the stuff is like super fragile. His first day on set on Guardians 2, they were shooting the opening sequence where they're fighting that big tentacled monster.
Yeah.
And the first time he landed on his back, when he got up, like all that shit stuck to the floor, and it just pulled off his back. And so they had to hastily, put it back on. And thankfully, the design is so busy that if there was some holes in it, they could get away with it, and it's cut so quickly. But so, whereas on the first one, it was pretty much bulletproof. I mean, we put him in it in the morning, and then he'd work all day, and that thing didn't budge.
God.
Again, it took 5 hours versus 2 hours, and so there's always a trade-off. But that's a lot of it is finding the right material for the job. The movie Norbit, one of the last things I did for Rick, I thought was a good example of. It's got the Rasputia, this large black woman makeup, which was foam latex because it was too heavy to be silicone, and it's basically paint-wise, it's fairly opaque, and it's large, so you want something lightweight. But the Mr. Wong character, the old Asian character in that, needed to be translucent, so that was silicone, and it had a real thin neck and had the cords in the neck, so it had to move. So I always thought there's not one right way to do it. It's finding the right material for the makeup. And actually, Boris here is a good example of. His face is silicone. He has like a piece down his neck that looks like interlocked fingers. That was a prosthetic transfer. The palm of his hand was foam latex because it had to be durable. The back of his hand was latex stipple because it was like an old age stipple. So just every piece of it was something different because that was the best material, for that part of his body. I almost did years in gelatin just so I could say I had literally one of everything, from slip latex to foam latex to transfer to silicone, but again, this was and being involved with this from the onset. I mean, Rick Baker designed it, and we did our first tests on Rick. But once we got the makeup nailed down, I knew I was going to be applying it, so I could say like, "Hey, could we, do the hands out of foam?" Because silicone would just, the first time he handled anything, it would just roll off. But it's very delicate. Whereas the foam latex is, you can do stuff to make it a little more bulletproof. So again, it's just having a shop that will accommodate, and that'll listen to you and then say, "Hey, I want to do it this way because, of this material as opposed to that material."
I love that shot. We'll go back real quick, make the shot with Boris. So when you see that, and then you go to the next one, you can actually see where his face is. So that's a lot. Was his nose also fake?
No, the nose is about the only thing that's not covered. So,
oh wow, okay.
And so that was a little bit of a bitch because you got an edge coming right, here, and then just getting the color tied together. And even if you've got it in the trailer and everything looks great, some actors, if they do something real physical, then they start getting flush and they'll
breaks it up.
Yeah, they'll go like their skin will go red. And like I was doing something recently, a Khrushchev makeup for a movie called 11 that's coming out next year, and Scarlett Johansson. It's like the space race in the 60s, and we had rubber on everything but like a little strip of the guy's forehead. And I wish the forehead piece had just come down all the way, so at least it's all the same material, so it all takes the paint the same way. Yeah. So it was a bit of a trial to get it matched. But then again, even if it looked perfect, if he went outside and he got too hot or he got too cold, there would be a color shift. And it's like, well, I can't now, if I make it, put yellow on it to kill the red, then once that flushness goes away, then suddenly the forehead's too yellow. And so there's a lot of, a lot of potential pain in the ass. But this is pretty cool. Just Steve Prouty designed this. But like the body is foam latex, and from the neck up is silicone. So this, again, I think if we'd done the body out of silicone, it would have been too heavy and taken too long to apply. So, again, it's finding the right material for the, for that part of the job. I don't know if you have any. This was a blast to work on. I
was going to say, yeah.
There were a lot of different body parts sculpted for that jet.
Yes.
I did paint and put the hair on those, which was an interesting job. But yeah, I was going to say this kind of fun is no longer legal, unfortunately.
Darn it.
These guys were just as crude as you could imagine. I mean, thankfully, it wasn't like I worked on Jackass 4 a little bit, but actually one of the days when they had like about 40 naked old men wandering around. So it's like, I can do without that. At least all the genitalia in this one was fake. But initially, my buddy Steve Prouty and I believe Will Huff were applying this initially, and Steve brought me in to help with the full body days because they just needed an extra, set of hands. Since I was there anyway, I started helping. Like I did the back of his hands and finished off the back of his neck and like the hair in his ears and that kind of stuff. But initially, I was only supposed to be there with these body days. Knoxville didn't really like wearing the chest, so they kind of dropped most of after about 2 days of him in this look. He's like, we're not going to do this anymore. But because of I think I'd endeared myself, with my crude sense of humor sufficiently to where Knoxville was like, yeah, let's keep Bart, And, so thankfully for my, and then actually there's a couple of jokes in the movie. Like when we would make him up, he'd be looking over the day's work and like, oh, what am I going to do with this? What can we do here? And so we would just kind of spitball ideas. And have you guys seen the movie?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So when they have the flashback with the fish with the big dong that, when they come out of the flash, because I guess the last bit of that, the fish's member ends up in his mouth. So then when he comes out of the flashback, I go, well, you should say like, I can never eat fish sticks again, after, So he's like, that's great. So they used it. And then when we're at the crew screening, Knoxville's one row ahead of me and sitting over a little. And then when that comes on and it gets the appropriate laugh, then he like turned around and high-fived me,
Oh, I love it. I love it.
I didn't get a writing credit or extra money. I got a high five out of it. So that was good enough.
You couldn't get in the Writers Guild?
Not unfortunately, not based on that.
Not on that one. Yeah.
But we do keep in touch. He's one of the ones too that every once in a while we'll have like a text thread with him and the Steve Prouty and the other makeup artists. And so if any of us find like a crude, picture or joke or something, we'll be texting each other. And,
perfect.
So he again couldn't have been a nicer guy. And then this is from the reshoots from the first Guardian. So this was the version of Drax that had the silicone pieces that took. Yeah. So I think it was pretty darn close to 5 hours. It might have been between 4 and 5, but again the stuff was bulletproof. Once we had it on him, he could do anything in it. It pretty much held up. The only downside was that he would get sweat blisters under the not physically on his body, but just under the prosthetic. His sweat had nowhere to go, so
bubble up.
It would start bubbling up. So we'd have to sit there with like little scissors and cut it and drain it. And thankfully, this didn't happen to me. But the guys that I was working with when they were shooting in London, they had some poor girl who that was her job to go around and chase the
drain the sweat. Oh my God!
And at one point, she cut it at the wrong angle and it like shot out and got her right in the mouth.
Oh boy!
No good. But there's John Moore, the guy with the 96.4 orangutan. He was like from London. He's done Drax. Him and Robin Pritchard have done him for all of his appearances and Guardians and all this stuff. And then there's Lenny McDonald and Victoria Holt. Lenny's local. Victoria was also from London. But Lenny's someone who I met at Rick Baker's on Gorillas in the Mist in 1987, and our paths crossed frequently. So he was on Gremlins 2 and Guardians and this, and so
wow.
So, but Dave's a great guy, and so what can I?
So is he one of those guys? Because I see him probably sitting. I mean, I don't know the guy at all from Adam, but when it comes to like just my perception, he'd probably be the one, because he was a wrestler and all this stuff like that. He'll take that however many hours and be like, it doesn't seem like he's got who would complain. Do you ever have people that just like sit there and want to get out of it and just are actors that are a little more fickle than other ones?
Yeah, unfortunately, and Dave was a good sport about it. I think he's finally over it, and I think most of what you see in Guardians 3, and I think maybe even the Christmas special, he's got a vest on, so they didn't have to put that part of it on him. So I think he's kind of done with Drax, but But again, he was always, I think he was one of those guys that like, this is what I've signed up for, so let's do it. But I mean, super nice guy and all that. But I have worked with no one that comes to mind. And I probably wouldn't name a name if I did. But particularly now in the age of cell phones, you got guys that are like this the whole time while you're trying to make them up, and it's like, come on, let me do my, even as far back as the first Hellboy, the stunt double. The first day I did him, he had like a Game Boy that he was playing, and I was like, well, I don't want to be it's like I'll work around it, but it took like twice as long as it should have because it was just slowing me down. And finally with him, because it was just a stunt guy, I was like, look, you got to put that damn thing away. It's like, I can't, you're killing me. It's a 3.5 hour makeup anyway. And I think it took like 5 hours or something, because again, I just couldn't get in there and do what I had to do. And then, unfortunately, there's a lot of people, and I don't think they're necessarily doing it maliciously, but they're just not conscious that, we need access to your head. They want to be like eating breakfast, or they're like meeting and talking to people, like the director will come in, and it's like, we're trying to work here. It's like, and then, and like we'll stop sometimes. And they go, oh, you don't have to stop, keep going. It's like, no, I do, because I can't,
you're talking
around his mouth. Yeah. While you're yakking at him. So it's like, what you're doing, and then I'll finish. That's great. So that kind of stuff is frustrating. And then, yeah, there's definitely people that it's like, what did you think when you read the script and it said, you're a blue alien, they were going to, how do you think they were going to do that?
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes it's just amazing. It's like, well, come on, you're, whatever. But fortunately, again, like Kelsey Grammer was great. Chiklis, I think Chiklis had some claustrophobic issues, but he was able to, push through them and deliver to him. And Chris Evans are the best part of those first two movies.
Yeah.
So thankfully, I think Jermaine Clement couldn't have been nicer, so I think I've been pretty lucky. And then again, I think the ones that were dicks, I think I just kind of push them out of my mind.
Yeah, exactly. On to the next one. Exactly.
Yeah. So, Bart, I told you that this is the fastest 90 minutes on the internet. And this is, I get proven right every single week. Yes. And I want to go around though. I want to see, I'm going to start with Paul. I want to see what you're doing there.
Oh, very cool.
You got some good progress, Paul. Holy crap.
I'm going to do something with the top. He'll have some big demon-y ears and horns or something. And just trying to make him look tired, really. He's exhausted, right? Please tell me.
Yes, that's the thing, yeah.
He's looking good.
That's looking great. Wow.
He's tired of listening to me talk.
Hey, man. I could listen to these stories for hours and be like, again, another one.
Well, we'll call this part one.
Yes, sir. Yes, indeed.
Well, I admit to try and pay more attention to what you guys were doing while I was yakking.
No. This is the show. We wanted to learn about you, and then they just work in the background. And
right, but I mean, as I was, just kind of a couple times I'd be looking over, but because I don't do a lot of this type. I mean, I don't do a lot of sculpting in general anymore, but particularly the carving kind of stuff, I never really got that into. So it's just kind of. I'm fascinated by that. So good job.
As are we with what you do. So
this is what makes
the show so much fun for us, because you're telling us about all these characters that you worked on and all these experiences, and it's just basically like Christmas morning as I'm like,
well, thank you very much.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Said, it was a quick 90 minutes. Let's see the other one.
Oh yeah.
Oh, there you go.
So I'm going. I got to go exhausted. So he's kind of making his way. He's kind of blocking like Paul, but. I wanted to go kind of pointy nose, and I'm not sure what to do with the teeth, but I want him to be like, kind of have that look on his face, like I've had it.
Are those the bottom teeth?
Nothing here yet.
Oh,
it would almost look cool if that was like the gums, like he had that extended.
Oh! So this is gums.
He couldn't even hold his bottom lip up. He was so.
Oh, you know what? I could pivot. I still have some room.
Oh, don't let me intrude on the.
I got top teeth here, and this could just be like the very bottoms of his bottom teeth down. Hey, Bob, you know what? I'm gonna do the same thing, kind of like some ears or horns or something to make them. I'm thinking horns in the front. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's the best part of it. It's the best part of it. No idea.
Yeah. I could say I wouldn't have him touching. If you have him with the mouth open, like he's exhausted.
Yeah.
So like slack jawed. You got room to, like you said, just having him peeking up out of the lip. But cool.
And the bottom of it too is like the bell, like where the air pocket is, and like in a pumpkin, like this kind of thing, like that. But like this section right here would lend itself well if I cut it open. It would just be a void. So we'll see. We'll see
cool.
what we get.
So what do you guys do with these when you're done? You just toss them, or do you mold them, or because I mean these are all so cool. But you just photograph them. I mean that's great, but it's like almost like you want to do like a quick mold of them and get you a plaster or a urethane copy, just so you got something to.
I recently started scanning them.
Oh well, there you go. Okay,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Let's go into the 21st century.
I know, but
I'll tell you why.
Believe me, exactly.
I scan them because I suck at molding so bad that I got sick of wasting money every single time I screwed up.
Yeah. Oh no, I mean that makes perfect sense. I need to learn all that crap.
I mean, and we've had some of the best molders in the business on that are like, no, you just do this, this, and this, and it's like, no, you can do that. Right. I look at that, and then I'm like, I got this, and then I get into it, and I'm like, I just wasted $60 of material. This is not coming out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah. Well, no, obviously the scanning is the
future, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. If you got the setup, then why not? Then you can output it whatever size you want, and I mean, the stuff Rick Baker does now with all this digital stuff.
Crazy.
He's amazing. It's beautiful to watch.
Yeah. It's
definitely a learning curve, though. It took me, I'd say, about 3 or 4 months to actually get the nerve to fail with it enough to figure out how to use the scanner, because it loses tracking and you got to spin it. And so, yeah, now that I know how to use it, I'm just basically building the catalog, and then you got to learn how to use ZBrush to clean it up.
Right.
Then Gino Acevedo gave me the right printer to get, so I went out and bought that. So I have all this stuff, and now I put the cart before the horse, because I don't have the know-how yet. So, but this is the thing that's going to jump me into it, because I do feel bad when you get asked these questions. You want to have a good answer. So I'm going to have a great answer one day, Bart. You'll see.
There you go.
Yeah, someday.
Right. No, these things are cool. I'll definitely have to check out some more of your some of your previous podcasts. Scan through for again, guys like Brian Wade and Gino, guys that I know, and V. I'll definitely have to check hers out. So this has been fun.
Yes,
this was great.
If you want to check out more of Bart's work, go to his Instagram. It is a treasure trove of history. And it's awesome. I still have like half a deck that we can talk about. So we definitely want to bring you back, Bart. We have so much more to talk about. It's been fascinating to know your history and everything. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Here's where you can find us. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok. Guys, any last words before we sign off for this week?
Thanks, Bart. Thanks for joining us. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Such a huge fan.
Thank you very much. And again, as you can tell, I love to yak. So we could definitely arrange a part 2 at some point. We'll see.
Maybe we'll get you out of retirement with the sculpting, and we'll get you into the carver version of Bart.
You're already an award-winning pumpkin sculptor already. We've seen, at least second place. That's an award. But tell you what, we'll get you exactly. We'll get you going off the wheel with us next time.
There you go. Maybe so. Okay, cool. Well, great. It's been a pleasure, and thanks again for having me. And let's do it again sometime.
You got it. See you next week with another Carvers and Creators. Good night, everyone. Take care.
Bye, guys.